Never expected 7 days of Japanese minimalism would completely transform my life. Have you ever felt like no matter how hard you try to organize your life, your routines, your work, even your self-care, there's still something inside you that feels cluttered, weighed down, and you can't quite explain why? Like your mind is always buzzing, even when everything around you is quiet? If that sounds familiar, I want to invite you to pause, take a slow breath, and give yourself the space to step into this journey, because these 7 days of Japanese minimalism might be exactly what you've been needing. Because clutter isn't just about what we see. It's the thoughts we haven't sorted, the emotions we haven't released, and the responsibilities we carry without ever stopping to ask ourselves, what truly matters? Japanese minimalism isn't just a trend about owning less or making your home look clean and pretty. It's an art of living a way of gently letting go of what no longer serves you, so you can return to clarity, intention, and your truest self. It's not just about clearing out a drawer, it's about clearing space inside your heart. It's not just about choosing what to keep, it's about recognizing what's worth holding on to in life. And I believe that if you're here right now, listening to this, it's because something in you is ready to explore a way of living that's not rooted in consumption, but in presence. Ready to begin a healing journey through the smallest, most ordinary choices. Ready to discover that sometimes having less actually means having so much more. Day 1. Starting the journey and my first big shifts. Day 1 began with a heavy, nameless feeling. I stood in the middle of my familiar apartment, looked around, and for the first time, I truly saw it. I was drowning in my stuff. Clothes I hadn't worn in years. Gadgets I once got excited about, but now sat collecting dust. Every corner whispered back reminders of procrastination, suppression, and that vague, gnawing guilt of having wasted too much. Something deep inside me just wanted out. Not just to clean, but to peel off a hardened layer that had been locking me in place for far too long. That's when I stumbled upon Dansshari, a Japanese minimalist philosophy developed by Hideko Yamashita. Unlike the more popular KonMari method, which encourages you to keep only things that spark joy, Dansshari is more confrontational, more raw. It asks you to refuse what's unnecessary, discard what no longer serves you, and detach from your emotional dependence on material things. I don't know why, but as I read about it, tears welled up. Maybe because, for the first time, someone gave me permission to let go. I didn't have to keep everything. I didn't have to carry the burden of being responsible for every dollar I'd spent. I was allowed to breathe. I started with a simple rule, the 90-90 rule. I asked myself, have I used this in the past 90 days? Will I need it in the next 90? If the answer to both was no, I gently placed it in a donation box. At first, my hands trembled, but soon it felt like I was lifting a stone off my heart, a quiet lightness. The first place I tackled was my desk. I used to blame myself for not being able to focus. I thought I lacked discipline, but as I cleared away old receipts, dried out pins, random cords with no purpose, I began to see the empty space emerge. And that space was exactly what I had been craving. I remembered reading a study from UCLA showing that cluttered environments can raise cortisol, the stress hormone, by up to 17%. And a recent Yale study noted that clutter overwhelms our visual cortex, making it harder to concentrate. But that day, I didn't need scientific proof. I could feel it in my body. After just 20 minutes of tidying up, it felt like my brain had been dusted off. Everything inside me felt cleaner, brighter, more still, not just externally, but internally. I then created a simple morning routine. I chose to wake up at 7 a.m. every day, not because I had to, but because I wanted my body to find its rhythm again. I made myself a minimalist breakfast, overnight oats with chia seeds, almond milk, and a few berries. It was simple, but full. I ate without checking my phone, without scrolling, just me, my spoon, and the silence. I started to understand minimalism isn't just about throwing things away. It's about softening the noise in your mind. It's about reclaiming your attention. It's about stepping out of the past where things used to have value and letting go of the future, where we're always saving things just in case. The day ended with something small. I breathed slower. I fell asleep easier. I smiled at myself in the mirror, a smile as light as a leaf drifting across a Zen garden. If you're feeling weighed down, I want to tell you this. You don't have to start with a big revolution. Just try the 90-90 rule today. Walk through your room, hold each item in your hand, and ask, have I used this in the last 90 days? Will I truly need it in the next 90? If not, give it a chance to bring value to someone else. You'll be surprised. Sometimes all it takes is a cardboard box and one simple question for your entire inner world to begin shifting. Day 2 to 3. Shifting my mindset and spending habits. I started to realize that minimalism isn't just about tidying or throwing things away. It reaches far deeper. It begins at the root of awareness, where every shopping decision, every item I bring home, reflects something inside me, a fear, an emptiness, or sometimes just an automatic habit formed over time. I adopted a simple rule I learned from Leo Babauta, creator of Zen habits, the one in one out rule. For every new item I brought into my home, one had to leave. No negotiations, no exceptions. It may sound small, but it forced me to pause and think before buying anything. I couldn't just casually add something to my cart, because I knew I'd have to make a choice. What would I be willing to let go of in return? I placed a donation bin right by my front door. It became a quiet, persistent reminder. Every time I held something new and asked myself whether it was worth exchanging for something else, I was practicing mindfulness. A gentle kind, not rigid, not forced, but real. I know some people go even further with a 1 and 2 out rule, but I didn't push myself. I wanted this to be sustainable, not overwhelming. And even sticking to 1 for 1, after just 2 days, I was surprised by how much I was ready to let go, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I also began shifting how I thought about shopping. In the past, whenever I passed a beautiful store, saw a sale, or got targeted by an ad, I'd think, oh, that's useful. But over these 2 days, I started asking a different set of questions. Do I truly need this? Will I use it more than 10 times? Can I afford it without regret? And when I asked honestly, many times the answer was no. Strangely, I didn't feel deprived. I felt free. Like I had just walked away from a trap I didn't even know I was in. I read that most people spend around $5,000 a year on impulse purchases. That number has started to drop recently, not because we've become better at self-control, but because rising costs have forced us to be more selective. But I didn't want to wait until I had to cut back out of necessity. I wanted to choose this path even when I could spend because I no longer wanted material things to control how I felt. One simple but powerful tool that helped me was the HALT method. Before buying anything, I'd pause and ask, am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? Because it turns out, many of my past spending habits weren't rooted in real need. They were emotional. I used to shop when I felt bored, disconnected, or empty. But when I could name what I was really feeling, I could choose a different kind of healing, not through buying, but through connection. I also began to shift my focus from owning to experiencing. I tried joining a local skill-sharing workshop. It was free, it didn't involve bringing anything home, but I left feeling more full than any purchase had made me feel in a long time. And what stayed with me the most was how that feeling lingered long after the experience ended. It wasn't about possession, it was about presence. I remembered reading about a psychology theory that said, the joy we get from buying something fades within weeks, but the joy from meaningful experiences stays longer because it becomes part of our identity, our memories, our view of the world. I didn't need another gadget. I needed a walk with friends, a moment to sit and listen to someone's story, an afternoon where I actually felt alive. By the end of day 3, there was a very clear awareness taking root inside me. I was spending less, but feeling more whole. I didn't feel like I was lacking, I felt like I had enough. Not because I owned everything, but because I no longer believed I needed so much. If you're not sure where to start, maybe all you need is a donation bin by your door. Each time you want it to buy something new, ask yourself, am I willing to let go of something else to make space for this? And if you find yourself hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, tend to your inner self first. When your heart is calm, your choices feel free. Day 4 to 5, healing my mind and emotions. I started to realize that what exhausted me the most wasn't always work or relationships. It was the sheer mental fatigue of having to make too many decisions each day. From what to wear, what to eat, what to do first, what to do next. It all piled up like invisible dust clouding my mind. I read that we make an average of 35,000 decisions a day. Whether or not that number is exact, the sense of overload felt absolutely real. And surprisingly, it was minimalism that helped me unravel that. I decided to simplify my wardrobe. I kept only what I truly needed, items that were versatile, comfortable, and fit my current lifestyle. I stopped trying to be fashionable and started prioritizing clarity. Maybe that's why Steve Jobs wore the same black turtleneck every day. It was his way of conserving mental energy. Once I adopted this mindset, choosing what to wear each morning went from 15 minutes to under 2. And with that, I felt like I had reclaimed a quiet mental space I didn't even know I had lost. I also turned my focus toward emotional regulation, something I had long avoided. I began journaling my emotions at night. Nothing fancy, just honest. Simple questions like, how did I feel today? Or, what drained me? Or, when did I feel light? Were enough to help me listen to myself in a way I never had before. And often, I realized my sadness didn't come from big events, it came from forgetting to care for myself for too long. I started practicing the 4-7-8 breathing method. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7, exhale for 8. It sounds simple, but that very simplicity opened up a deep sense of calm I never expected. Every time I practiced, it felt like I was gently embracing myself, not pushing, not performing, just being. I continued to use the HALT method to check in with my emotional state. Anytime I felt triggered, instead of reacting, I would pause and ask, am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? And more often than not, just taking that pause softened the entire emotional wave. I began to understand that patience doesn't come from forcing yourself to wait. It comes from being present with each moment. I started making tea slowly every day. I'd watch the steam rise, listen to the sound of water hitting the cup. I didn't do anything else. I didn't multitask. I didn't rush. And in those 3 quiet minutes, I wasn't maximizing time, I was simply living it. And from that space, I started learning how to wait, how to slow down, how to truly savor even the smallest things. I also pared down my workspace. Just a desk, a monitor, and one small plant. No scattered papers, no extra stuff. Working in that kind of environment made it easier to focus. I read somewhere that plants can boost productivity by 15%. Whether that's accurate or not, I believe in the gentle, grounding presence that little green plant gave me every time I looked at it. I also began using simple tools to help me unplug from the digital world. I tried an app that blocks notifications for 25 minutes so I could focus. What surprised me wasn't just that I got more done, it was that my thoughts stopped jumping around. That focused attention helped me slip into deep work naturally, without force. I gradually noticed that clutters and procrastination often go hand in hand. The more stuff around me, the easier it was to delay things. But when my physical space was clear, my mind also became clearer. I no longer avoided tasks or dreaded starting something new. Everything felt a little more accessible, a little more doable. I also realized that when I ate more slowly, chewed more mindfully, or simply felt the water flowing over my hands as I washed dishes, I stopped drifting off into endless, noisy thoughts. I wasn't stuck in autopilot anymore. I was present, and that presence was like an anchor keeping me grounded, no longer drifting in invisible worries. Days 4 and 5 closed with a deep sense of calm, not because my life was suddenly perfect, but because I had learned how to soothe myself when things weren't. I had finally discovered what it meant to come home to myself without needing to escape. And to me, that might be one of the most profound gifts of minimalism, when your inner world is quiet, steady, and bright enough that you no longer need so much from the outside just to feel okay. Day 6-7, embracing a more sustainable lifestyle. After 5 days of living simply and tuning into myself, I began to realize this was no longer just a challenge. It had slowly become a way of life. And on days 6 and 7, I felt ready to go further, not just to live with less, but to live more sustainably. Not just less for convenience, but less for responsibility, intention, and depth. I started with my wardrobe. I narrowed it down to 3 tops, 2 bottoms, and 1 jacket, all within 3 neutral tones that mixed effortlessly. No more standing in front of my closet sighing, I have nothing to wear. Now, everything I owned had a purpose. I kept only what made me feel genuinely at ease, comfortable pieces that reflected who I am now, not some ideal version of me in the future. The rest, I folded neatly and donated. I used the spark joy principle, not as a trendy phrase, but as a genuine emotional check-in. As I touched each item, I asked, does this still make me feel good? Does it still belong in my life? If the answer was no, I let it go. And honestly, that conscious act of choosing made me feel so light, not just physically, but emotionally too. I also started learning about the Japanese philosophy of Kaizen, small, consistent improvements, just 1% each day. There's no need for drastic transformation, just steady, gentle progress. I thought about this every time I cleaned the kitchen in the morning, just 5 minutes a day, but every single day. With consistency, it became a habit. And in the long run, it's these small habits that truly shape a life. I took inspiration from the 5S method in Kaizen: sort, set in order, shine, standardize, sustain. My kitchen no longer felt chaotic. It became a space I could move through with ease, a space that supported me instead of draining me. And I realized that simplicity actually made everything easier. I didn't have to force myself to be organized anymore. I just naturally maintained it. Cleaning started to feel less like a chore and more like a rhythm. I would wipe the counter while boiling water, tidy up as the rice cooked, fold towels as I waited for the pan to heat. It became part of my flow, gentle, integrated, and almost invisible. And as caring for my space became lighter, so did my mind. I tried using a small app to track cleaning tasks, not as pressure, but as a little game, a way to see my progress. Each time I checked off a task, I felt this quiet satisfaction. Not because I was being productive, but because I was being present, actively nurturing my space and, by extension, myself. I began to understand that sustainability doesn't have to be a grand effort. It can begin in the smallest ways, in how we choose our clothes in the morning, in how we wash a single dish without letting our minds wander elsewhere. When we bring care into the tiniest actions, we're living sustainably with ourselves, not wasting, not draining neither our resources nor our emotions. So, what about you? After watching this 7-day journey, what change are you inspired to make? Leave a comment below saying, I'm going to start simplifying my space, and let me know which part of the Japanese minimalist philosophy spoke to you the most. If this video resonated with you, give it a like and subscribe so we can keep walking this path together. Here, we talk about slowing down, living more intentionally, and finding peace in the quiet simplicity of everyday life. If you'd like more content like this, don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss future videos. And if you know someone who's feeling overwhelmed, both in their space and in their mind, share this with them. Sometimes, one small action can open the door to a much bigger shift. The real question is, will you keep repeating the same old patterns, or will you choose a new way of living starting today? I'll see you in the next video.